You didn't get fired. Not yet. But something shifted. You can feel it. The meetings you used to run, you're now just attending. Your name stopped appearing on the important emails. Your manager started being unusually nice to you in a way that feels less like a warmth and more like guilt. Nothing was said. Nothing official happened. But something is happening. This is called a managed exit, and it's one of the most common, most calculated, and least talked about practices in the modern corporate world. Companies rarely fire people outright anymore. It's expensive, legally complicated, and bad for morale. Instead, they engineer the conditions that make you leave on your own. Or they build a paper trail so airtight that when the moment comes, you have no ground to stand on. The really unsettling part? Most people don't recognize it until it's already over. This is happening at a scale most employees don't appreciate. In the United States alone, millions of workers are separated from their jobs every single month. And a significant portion of those separations were decided long before any formal conversation took place. The termination meeting's almost never where it starts. It's where it ends. And the cost of missing the signs is not just emotional, it's financial, strategic, and deeply practical. People who don't see it coming lose negotiating leverage, miss the window to secure other opportunities, and often walk away with far less than they were entitled to, simply because they were surprised. The people who see it coming have time to negotiate, time to find the next thing, time to leave on their own terms instead of someone else's. So this is a breakdown of what the pattern actually looks like. Not from a self-help perspective, but from the perspective of someone reading the organizational architecture clearly and without sentiment. The process almost always starts the same way, not with a confrontation, with a quiet redistribution. Your responsibilities start moving. Not all at once, that would be too obvious. Just one project handed to someone else because they're better positioned right now. One client shifted because of bandwidth concerns. One initiative you were leading gets restructured under a different team. Each individual move sounds completely reasonable. Taken together, they mean something specific. Your role is being hollowed out from the inside. When the moment comes to let you go, there will be almost nothing left to backfill. The job essentially disappears before you do. This is the first sign, not a single dramatic reassignment, a slow, quiet erosion of the work that justified your seat at the table. The second sign is what happens to your access, not your badge, your informational access. The meetings where decisions get made start happening without you. You find out about things after they're already decided. You're copied on emails instead of addressed in them. You're invited to the presentation of the outcome, not the discussion that shaped it. In organizational terms, and you've been moved to the periphery, you're still inside the building, but the real map of how things work no longer includes you as a node. The third sign is a documentation. This one is subtle and most people miss it entirely. Your manager starts following up verbal conversations in writing. Feedback that used to happen casually in a hallway is now arriving as a formal email. Performance conversations that were previously relaxed are including phrases like, "as we discussed," and "to confirm what was agreed." Every interaction is being timestamped and recorded. This isn't conscientiousness, it's construction. Someone is building a paper trail and you are the subject of it. Here's the uncomfortable reality of how companies think about this. Letting someone go improperly, without documentation, without process, without a defensible paper record, exposes a company to legal liability. Wrongful termination suits, discrimination claims, severance disputes. Legal departments exist partly to prevent exactly this. So before anyone gets pushed out, there's almost always a process of making the exit defensible. That process takes time, typically weeks, sometimes months. And during that entire period, the target employee is usually still showing up, still working, still assuming the awkwardness is temporary. The real irony is this: by the time most people sense something is wrong, the decision is often already made. What's still being constructed is not the decision, it's the paperwork that supports it. There's also a financial calculation happening that employees rarely consider. Companies are acutely aware of severance costs, unemployment claims, and notice periods. A managed exit, where the employee resigns voluntarily, eliminates most of that liability. So the incentive to create conditions uncomfortable enough to trigger a voluntary resignation is very real and very deliberate, making your life slightly smaller, your role slightly less interesting, your environment slightly more isolating, not enough to constitute a hostile workplace claim, just enough to make you wonder why you're still there. Now here's the version of this story that companies tell publicly versus what's actually happening. The official story is always about business needs, restructuring, realignment, evolving priorities, role elimination. The language is always strategic, never personal. This decision was not a reflection of your performance. That sentence should be read carefully, because it also means the performance documentation exists regardless, sitting in a file just in case. The reality is that these decisions are almost always personal before they become structural. Someone in a position of influence decided the fit wasn't right, or the cost wasn't justified, or the political winds had shifted. The organizational rationale gets built afterward to support a conclusion that was reached beforehand. This is the machinery most employees never see because they spend their energy reacting to the official explanation, defending their performance, asking for clarity, requesting feedback, while the actual decision sits upstream of all of that, in a conversation that already happened without them. The people who navigate this most effectively are the ones who stop engaging with the official story and start reading the actual signals. They treat their employment the way an investor treats a position. They're watching the indicators, not the press release. Pull back even further, and this pattern reveals something worth sitting with about how modern employment actually works. The psychological contract that defined employment for most of the 20th century, loyalty exchange for security, has largely dissolved. Most companies now operate with an implicit understanding that roles are contingent, tenure is conditional, and the relationship is transactional in both directions. That's not inherently sinister. Markets change. Companies pivot. Roles that were essential 2 years ago become redundant. That part is real. What's worth scrutinizing is the gap between how companies communicate that reality and how they actually manage it. The language of "we're a family here" and "our people are our greatest asset" is everywhere, right up until the moment the calculation changes. At which point the manage exit process begins quietly, while the family language continues on the company's LinkedIn page. Employees who understand this aren't cynical, they're calibrated. They maintain their performance, their relationships, and their reputation, but they also maintain their options. They treat job security not as a promise someone made them, but as a condition they monitor continuously. That's not paranoia. That's how the other side of the table thinks. Every day. So what are the signs that a company is pushing you out? Your responsibilities erode without explanation. Your access to information quietly shrinks. Feedback that used to be casual becomes formal and written. You stop being included in decisions before they're made, and start being informed about them after.